if you're using $1 million missile to take out a $20,000 drone, then you've got a problem regardless how rich you are. I think the Australian government should just come out and say, if you're a bank and you don't back the businesses that power Australia, you lose access to the deposit guarantee system. If you're preferencing things that hurt Australia, why should we pay for that? And there's a leaderboard for Ukrainian units, young men in combat with a bit of a competition that try and win. You get these points, then go back to the store. Instead of using actual money, you can then use in-game currency to buy more drones, to destroy more equipment, to buy more drones, to get more equipment.
Are you making this up?
No.
This is blowing my mind. All right, let's go. Steve, thanks for your time. If we were to sit here over the next hour and Shark Tank Australia, where would you start?
Oh, well, thanks for having me, Karl. Shark Tank Australia, I think I'd be pitching something around energy, liquid fuels, and some really common sense solutions, which I think, in a financial investment sense, you could make a fair bit of coin out of. Have
you been shocked by what we've seen here over the last couple of months?
I've been shocked that we're shocked. I mean, this is all so predictable. Lots of people have been warning about it for decades, to be honest. So the real shock for me is we're that shocked about it. It was bound to happen at some point. I think we're lucky that we only have a sort of potential inbound liquid fuel restriction, and we don't have export restrictions, which we might get. God forbid if we get into some sort of conflict and we actually get blockaded, which seems to be the word of the week, blockade. So
you come to this with a fair bit of experience. You served the country. Tell us about that.
Oh yeah, so I joined in 1987 under a scheme called the Army Apprentices Scheme as a 15-year-old, which now as a dad of a 12-year-old, thank Christ it's illegal, to be honest. It was a bit too young, but great. Sign up for, so what's worse than recruiting a 15-year-old, but signing up for a 9-year contract when you're 15. So I did just a bit short of 9 years. It was good. I ended up being a guided weapons engineer ultimately through that process. My last posting was to Adelaide. We used to repair the surf-to-air missile systems, essentially. That was, honestly, it was a boring time. It was a peacetime army, and that's never that fun, to be honest. So, we sort of highly trained young men who have nothing to do, so we just get into trouble a lot, would be the best description for it, but great memories. It sort of set me up a fair bit, I suppose. I ended up starting a business from home whilst I was still serving as a dial-up internet service provider. So we installed 14 phone lines into a rented army married quarter. And I often ask, how'd you get permission to do that? So I knew the answer was going to be no, so I didn't bother asking. And that went well. So I did that, started that in November 94.
What, in the garage or something? It was a Steve Jobs kind of thing?
Yeah, spare bedroom, yeah. So just 14 phone lines. I even wired them myself because I was an Austel licensed technician. As a part of it being a technician, I had all the licenses. So I did all the wiring myself and wired them in and sort of started making money. I went, well, this has gone really well. This army stuff's for the birds. And a good boss had got me out about 4 months early from my 9-year contract. And the rest is history. We employed people. We sold that first business in 2000 to Aussie Mail at the time. And then started a second business out of Brisbane called Pipe Networks. We did a wholesale telecommunications products, listed that in 2005 and sold that in 2010.
Do all right out of that?
Yeah, it wasn't too bad. But I left actually in 2008, went and worked with Google in California for a year.
Yeah.
I was basically building fibre routes between their top secret data centers back then, to be honest. So it was interesting time. I left, I would have stayed in the US, I left, but California wanted to charge me almost 9% capital gains tax on my win. And I didn't want to pay that. So you got to get the stamp for the passport and got out of the US.
A 9% capital gains
I think
tax.
It was 8.95, but yeah, it was
outrageous.
Yeah.
The skills you picked up in the army, I think, is incredible for anyone who might be listening, any kid out there, because it's not just on the front lines, behind the lines, and it's world-class skills, right?
The training's great. So, and it's evolved a lot more since I left the military at the same time. We started fighting wars, and I think, in all truth, the army got a lot more serious. When bullets start getting shot, then I think the training regime gets serious, and it's less of a joke, and that's a good thing. But I'd highly recommend it as a career. Part I'm doing now, I'd love it if my kids. I have three daughters, a pair of 9-year-olds and a 12-year-old. I'd love it if they wanted to voluntarily serve one day, but if they're forced to, if they're conscripted, I think we've all stuffed up. But I think that the armed services. It's a great profession, and I've got all daughters, and we've just seen this week Susan Coyle as Chief of Army to replace Simon Scott, which I think is interesting. I think it's great that she's a signaller, and she's got more of an IT nerdy, geeky background, and which is where military endeavour is going.
Okay, let's climb into that because
okay.
I'm fascinated by that. We've had a couple of people on over the last couple of weeks suggesting that is the case. And when you look at what's happened in Iran and the way they've fought the might of the US with drones, what do you think we can take out of that and learn from that? And what skills should we be applying our young people to learn?
So look, I think that Iran's having some political wins, but not a single military victory. So I think that the drone solution that they've deployed has been thoroughly dealt with. When you fight a war, the enemy gets a say as well, and so they've had some successes in destroying US military equipment, and the casualties on the Allied side have been quite light, which is great. So the lesson to come out of it is Iran is fighting back with a very much an asymmetrical technology, being the drone. So a relatively cheap system to take on very expensive systems, sometimes called a shot exchange ratio. So if you're using a $1 million missile to take out a $20,000 drone, then you've got a problem regardless how rich you are. So that's what we need to take out of that. But a lot of this has evolved out of the horrible situation in Ukraine, for example. And I get asked a lot about what's the best, most interesting thing you've seen come out of the Ukraine war? And I say it's a website. And people look at me a bit dumbfounded, but the Ukrainian...
The way I'm looking at you now.
Yeah, pretty well. I wouldn't say that. You're the host, so I couldn't say that, Karl. So the Ukrainian MOD, Ministry of Defence, they have an innovation arm called Brave number one. And they have something called, and that focuses all their innovation to create new war fighting capability. And they created something called the Brave One Marketplace. You think of this as Temu for war goods, right? So a supplier can put their drone, their battery, their ration pack, really cares what it is, on this website. A Ukrainian commander in a trench with mud on his boots can get in his phone. He can order that thing that he wants for his unit. He can pay for it with a centrally allocated currency from the Ukrainian treasury. It gets delivered to his trench.
What?
It gets used, right? And then there's a star rating system. So he orders a drone that doesn't work. So what do you do if you get something you give it a 1-star rating? No supplier wants a 1-star rating. So what you do is you ring up the supplier and say, mate, this didn't work. I'm going to give you a 1-star rating. And they say, well, what? Stop. We'll fix it and we'll send you 10 more. So what you've done there is you've shortened the innovation loop. So someone's developed something, a user's tested it hasn't worked, you've received feedback, and you get this instant loop. So what we're doing in the West that takes 2, 3, 5 years, a decade, to innovate on military capability, it's happening in weeks, constantly in Ukraine. Now, I can scare you some more if you like on this website.
Please. It's a good scare.
So they have a separate but similar system where the Ukrainians analyse battle damage. So after they execute an attack, there's usually a camera attached to these things. They upload the footage. So the higher headquarters can understand, did we destroy that tank? Do we need to schedule another strike? They get intelligence from that. They also started allocating points for destroyed Russian equipment. So in-game currency. So essentially, if you destroy a tank, you get 40 points. If you destroy an artillery piece, you get 60. And there's a leaderboard for Ukrainian units. So young men in combat with a bit of a competition. There's a leaderboard. So they try and win this competition. They did some experiments. They actually changed. I'm a huge fan of incentives and outcomes. So they actually changed the point score. This is a bit macabre. So you might want to take a time check and cut this bit out.
We'll cut nothing out.
But so the point score allocated for a Russian KIA, a Russian soldier killed in action, was 2 points. They increased that to 6 and doubled the KIAs in a week. So they created an incentive to get an outcome on the battlefield. Now, you get these points, and then you can then go back to the store. Instead of using actual money, you can then use in-game currency to buy more drones, to destroy more equipment, to buy more drones, to get more equipment.
Are you making this up?
No.
This is blowing my mind.
This is the biggest military logistics innovation since the standardisation of a calibre of a rifle for armies, which didn't happen until the late 1800s, to give you some idea. This is, to me, is the scariest thing I've actually seen. You're taking development that takes years, down to weeks. Which it makes it a very hard conflict to write about. Like the headline risk, I'll compose these emails out to my investors. If I take more than 4 or 5 days to get my thoughts straight, it's changed 90 degrees because the innovation pace that comes out is truly frightening.
It's like trying to keep tabs with AI.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah,
so this is real game, but this is almost gaming war games.
Yep.
And war for real.
Yeah. And the US has just actually, so the US under Secretary of War Pete Hegseth has just replicated that website to a degree. And so Yeah, so the whole idea is about shortening those innovation cycles, knowing that things change, and the faster you can move and the faster you can iterate, the more of your soldiers you're going to keep alive.
All right, just so I've got this straight, you and I are sitting in a trench on the Ukraine-Russian front line. You go, Carlos, we want to pick up something for the Karl Stefanovic show. We need to take on all these, lefties.
Yep.
How does it work? What can we order? How much does it cost? And how does it get delivered? What is their Uber front line? I mean,
so there's lots of images published of that system. I don't have access to the actual back end system, to the actual store up front itself. They're quite public talking about it, so there's information you can find out there. It's called the Brave One Marketplace. And they have an open request out there. If you're a company in the Western world, anywhere in the world, who wants to actually test their gear, we don't really care what it is. We'll put it on this website. If someone wants it, they'll buy it, they'll get it delivered, and they'll test it, and they'll give you instant feedback if this thing works or not. So I don't know the logistics of getting it there. I've been told it's quite refined, it's quite mature, I suppose. I don't know exactly how it works, to be quite blunt.
It's a world that I never envisaged.
Yeah, I mean, I wrote an entire article, and some people think I'm crazy, and people, the biggest innovation has got to be a drone or a warship or something. I'm like, no, it's a website.
Okay, so you knowing that information now, what does it say about where Australian defence is placed and the path that we're on at the moment?
Well, just this week, I'm not sure when this is going to go to air, but just this week they're releasing the new NDS National Defence Strategy, and there's a lot of talk around drones, for example.
Yeah.
So right now we are very poorly situated when it comes to the type of weapons that are being used in Ukraine and now in the Middle East.
They're talking about $5 billion more for drones over
10 years.
Yeah.
So it's an extra 1% on the defence. So the defence budget for Australia is $50 billion. They're talking about $500 million a year. That's easy maths. My youngest daughters could do that. That's 1%. So I wouldn't. It's welcome. Don't get me wrong. And I think this government's trending towards doing the right thing in defence. I'm not a big supporter of this government, but they are honestly trying. So where's that put us? So we have some unmanned warfare capability. We have the Ghostbat, which is the Boeing developed aircraft out of Queensland, called the Loyal Wingman initially. We have the Anduril developed miniature submarine built here in Sydney Harbour. So that's a US company. Boeing is a US company. Anduril is a US company. This week in the papers, I was talking about a great company out of Melbourne called C2 Robotics with something called the Speartooth, which is a smaller version of that submarine that Anduril are building. It's just actually an actual Australian company. You have SciPac in Melbourne who are building the drones. Now, these guys actually, have you heard of the cardboard drone? No. So these guys built the cardboard drone.
Just to explain it to everyone.
Cardboard drone, it's a drone aircraft that comes flat packed on a pallet of about 30. So a soldier with a hot glue gun and a roll of masking tape folds flap A to flap B to flap C, and 45 minutes later there's about a 1.5 metre wingspan, conventionally looking drone, aircraft looking drone thing, and it can take 2 kilos of humanitarian payload. This is literally how they talk about these things, because you can't sort of say it takes 2 kilos of explosives, because that's just a bit, it makes people choke on their coffee. And to 60 kilometres, used to great effect about 18 months ago in an airfield in Kursk, where it destroyed, I think it was 7 Russian aircraft. So that company in Melbourne's the only Australian fighter race. They've actually destroyed more than 5 aircraft in battle, right? So, and all with a cardboard drone. Very, as it turns out, very capable, because cardboard is quite transparent to radar, so it's accidentally stealthy, you might say. Very cheap, very, very effective. Meant to be a one-way use, but they've used them sort of dozens of times, scores of times, the Ukrainians, to be honest. Well, not the explosive ones. The ones that explode, they don't get them back. But.
I mean, I remember making paper planes when I was a kid, but this is a whole new level and a very exciting one in the defence field. You don't hear much about it.
Australia doesn't use it.
What?
So, no, we don't use it.
Why not?
Yes, yeah, great. I'd love to understand that as well. I find that disappointing. At one stage, I was actually going to buy a pallet of them and of these drones from a great company and literally give it to an Australian Army unit and just say to the boys, just get these things together and just try them, test them. The fact they're cardboard, it means like a reasonably non-technical infantryman, for example, can experiment, can get another roll of masking tape out, and let's just take something to the wing. Can you make a biplane out of it? Let's take 2 together. So can you increase the payload? You can, when it's a cheap platform, you can experiment, and that's the real key about cheap. Isn't the budget? I suppose it is, but it allows you to if it's cheap, you can give it to a corporal. If it's expensive, you give it to a colonel. So that's the real difference, I suppose.
But what I'm getting from you is that most people see cost, and certainly the government sees cost, but you see opportunity at not as much cost.
Well, I think you will spend just as much.
Okay.
So these systems that cost less are, so let's say if you're very expensive interceptors, for example, your missile interceptors might be $3-4 million. They'll have an probably 97% probability of hit. The cheaper ones will have an 85% probability of a hit, but you can send 3 or 4 of them and get the same effect for a good deal less. So it's a concept called attritable mass. So you have a lot of things many things doing a job, and they're attritable. You don't really want them back. I mean, I find the term kamikaze drone to be a bit curious because it's like calling a bullet a kamikaze bullet. You actually don't want this thing back. It's ammunition, if you know what I mean. So and it gets used as such.
So where do you think we should be pouring our resources then?
Into innovation. Honestly, I don't know. I'm 55 years old, Karl, and I think that if a 55-year-old can tell a 21-year-old how to fight a war, you've gone mad. Literally, there's a battleship I'll sell you, seriously. So what we need to do is we need to preference innovation. So we need to put capability. So that Brave One website it's a really good mechanism to get capability into young people's hands fast, and they'll tell you what they think of it. So for me, it's about you preference high tech. I get asked a lot. I come from telecoms. What's the best? Was it 3G or 4G the best? I'll always go for the highest G number. It's always the best, if you know what I mean. So typically the latest highbrow computer science is the thing that works in tech. So follow that, you probably can't go wrong, to be quite honest. And so preference young people, give them the space and the ability to fail and not be overly penalised for it, to be honest, and see what happens.
What sort of reaction are you getting?
Everything I propose is really cheap. I don't propose big expensive solutions for things because to me that there's small irritants in systems that prevent them from working. And it seems you get no traction where you don't want to spend a lot of money, to be honest. I think that one of the solutions, for example, in Australia with defence businesses, with fossil fuel businesses as well, what prevents a lot of commercial activity there is the fact that banks won't bank them because they have these issues around fossil fuels or defence, ESG loosely, let's call it. Well, I think the Australian government should just come out and say, well, if you're a bank and you don't back the businesses that power Australia, energy businesses, regardless of the sort of energy, so fossil fuels or defence businesses, the businesses that defend Australia, you lose access to the deposit guarantee system. So it won't cost us any money, but if you're preferencing things that hurt Australia, then why should we pay for that? You will change their behaviour by that afternoon, and then that way, that's one of those long-term things. People can say, well, I can build a mine or a coal to liquids plant, whatever it might be, urea plant, defence plant, and I've actually got banking support, I've got insurance support, I've got credit card support. We couldn't get credit cards for our business, for God's sakes, and that was through Air Wallets. I shouldn't say. I'll name them because I think it was terrible. Because we're a defence business, we assist we provide financial backing to people who create things that defend the realm, and that was a bar too far for them.
Well, let's drop the ball on it all. Let's not have ever work towards some level of sovereignty. Yep. In defence capability. Yeah,
it's so pervasive out there. 87% of investment capital in Australia will not invest in defence. My military superannuation fund will not invest in defence projects. So they'll take money from the people who contribute to their funds who have to use this stuff and hopefully come home alive at the end of the day, but they won't invest in that.
All right. So how do you change that mindset then? That's almost cultural in a political way.
So look, it has changed in the US. It changed in a heartbeat, and as soon as Vladimir rolled his tanks into Ukraine, that changed almost instantly. To be honest, it is changed. It's very much on the change in Europe, which is nice. A large European bank just designated businesses that do societal good in the ESG mandate, to those including making parts for nuclear weapons. If you know what I mean. So you want to if you can, I suppose. So we can make the positive decision to change this. How do you change it? My personal way I will change it is I've been advocating for inside defence since 2016. In 2016, the Army asked me to get involved in an innovation program again. I'd had, at that stage, 2 years in the Shark Tank TV show, so I had an elevated public profile. Soldier Boy made good. Literally, it was a PR shot. Come get a picture with the general, shake. And I was happy to do it. Shake hands. And I walked in, and I thought I'd walked into James Bond's weapons lab. I'm like, how good is this? If that was in the army, I would have stayed. And then that rolled forward, and I was talking to them, trying to sort of say, okay, this is the role that private capital can play in building innovation, defence innovation.
Just backtrack, sorry to interrupt. In that meeting when you saw something exciting and then something happened to turn you away from it.
It was a funny day. So it was at Canberra, it was at ADFA. And the thing I remember the most is I got met at the door by a brigadier general who grabbed my suitcase. And then when I was in the army, I was a corporal. I used to grab their suitcases. So I thought, I've come a long way. That was pretty special. And I was getting shown around, and I was confused. And I'm like, and then I saw people out there taking photos and putting it on LinkedIn. And I thought, okay, so none of this is classified. Oh, okay, no worries. So I asked, where are the other investors? So, we don't trust investors. And I'm like, but I'm here. This is how the conversation went. They said, oh, we trust you. You met me 15 minutes ago. Literally, that was a conversation. I mean, they assumed because I'm an ex-soldier I was somewhat trustworthy, but I didn't get that, to be honest. So I did try and work with them to, this is what private capital can do. And they always think it's to spend less money. So if private capital comes in, then defence gets to spend less. In my world, this will cost defence more, but we'll get better outcomes.
So is the Defence Force reticent to take on this new wave? Or where does the problem lie? Why is it so fat?
Attitudes have changed a lot since 2000. So it's 10 years this year, I suppose, isn't it? So attitudes have changed a lot in 10 years. And the government in the last couple of months just released a $1 billion defence innovation plan, essentially, investment plan called Advanced Capability Investment Fund, which is the tenders are due end of this month. And I can't really talk much more about it because it's a tender process, but it's out there. So that's very positive. What I can say that is there's some exceptionally positive things in that document. The three things that I thought wouldn't be in there are, they mention kinetics. They use the word kinetic as opposed to lethality, and we tend to talk in terms of lethality. But
tell me about those. Explain that for me.
So kinetics is, so our fund, Beaton's Own Venture Partners, we back companies making capability around lethality and survivability. So the reality is that you don't stop the enemy with harsh language alone. You need a robust man carrying something heavy. We never want to see this stuff used, right? But we need it there. So that's just a fact of how you defend the realm. A robust man carrying heavy things. So that's the lethality kinetic issue, and that was solely inside of their tender document, which was I didn't expect to see that. That was very pleasant. Then they spoke about the export. So many of these federal government schemes in the past have been around tied to Australian Defence Force requirements. Now, the Australian Defence Force, love them, served 9 years. I'd carry a rifle again if they needed to. They'd want to be desperate because my knees are pretty bad, to be honest. So, but it's in US dollar terms, the Australian defence budget is $38 billion in US dollars. The Yanks last year spent $1 trillion US dollars, and they've just gone out with a request for $1.5 trillion US dollars. And that's still less in percentage of GDP terms than the peacetime years of the Cold War. To put defence spending in perspective, that's how little we're spending on defence.
The long and the short of it is we're not spending anywhere near enough.
No, we're not.
To be ready for what's coming, potentially.
We are not spending. I'm embarrassed because we are relying on our ally, our security guarantor, which is the US. We're like the fat kid who won't go to the boxing gym, is getting bullied and expects his mate to come and fight for him. It is that bad. I mean, the Yanks are about to spend 4.5% of GDP in defence, and we're spending 2%, but barely 2%. And we couldn't send a single ship to assist in the Red Sea.
Well, I wonder if we were lucky that they didn't ask. Certainly, Albo was lucky they didn't ask.
Yeah,
I mean, because then he isn't a pickle.
Well,
but I don't see how you can say no.
I agree.
I don't see how you can say no to Donald Trump when, if something happens here, you're on the phone to Donald Trump straight away, and there ain't no one else who's going to come.
What I find disappointing is we can't even. We have the expectation that mothers in Ohio will send their sons and daughters to die for us. Well, we can't at least just spend enough to prevent that. I find that to be just embarrassing as an Australian. So I'd like to see that change. So I'm trying to personally do something where I think I can show a better way to get there. I don't think shouting at them doesn't work. But I think if I can demonstrate a better way and we get some awesome outcomes whilst making money for investors. So I think the truest motives are around financial returns. If we can do that at the same time getting great sovereign Australian outcomes, that's brilliant.
I'll circle back to that, but just to close off on the US argument, I know I feel the same way. I don't want to see troops go overseas and die. Last thing I want. But if these are the guys who are going to protect us, then you have to pull your weight at some point, don't you?
You'd hope so, wouldn't you? I mean, I was mortified and horrified when I heard what happened about those 3 sailors on the US submarine that sank, that was involved in the torpedoing that Iranian ship. I was actually in the Sky News the next day saying I thought everyone was a bit worried about it, and I said, well, it's great, we now have 3 combat trained submariners. How good's that? And then we learned they got sent to their bunks. Imagine being the poor men in that boat who got sent to their bunks and weren't allowed to go and play sailor for real. How do you stay on that boat? That is, so we need to change our attitude towards that sort of stuff.
Is AUKUS too fat? Too far away?
No, I actually like AUKUS. It's a lot of money, aside from the amount of money. I like AUKUS. I like the fact we're getting nuclear-powered submarines. I think they're an amazing piece of capability. You've just got to listen to someone like Mark Hammond, who now I think is Chief of the Defence Force and Chief of the Navy. When he talks about that, he gives you nothing but confidence this is going to work. He's an amazing sailor, so which is great. So AUKUS is $365 billion over 32 years, roughly $320 billion of submarines and $40 billion of what they call AUKUS Pillar 2, which is AI, all other forms of warfare other than submarines, I suppose. So overall, I like it. But if you look at the Australian defence budget, before AUKUS it was $50 billion. It's now $50 billion still. $385 billion over 32 years is at least on simple maths, $10 billion a year. Now, the Australian defence budget hasn't moved in 3 years. So we're already $30 billion behind on that spend. So I don't believe what politicians say. I look at what they do. And I'm not seeing the actions that reflect their words at this point in time. When I see the actions, then we know their words are true.
All right. So I mentioned at the start of this interview that we should Shark Tank Australia. Maybe more pointedly right now, welcome to Shark Tank Australian Defence.
All right.
What are you seeing? What would you like to see the investments doing, the investments going, and the outcomes for Australia?
If I was to pitch, I suppose, if I was to make a pitch to the Australian government about what they should do with defence, I suppose, I would supercharge AUKUS. I'd bring it forward, supercharge it, bring that spending forward. Ultimately, what I'd like to do is I'd like to sort of say that we need to grow up in Australia. We can't be the big welfare state we are and also defend ourselves. So we're
NDIS, for example.
I was going to NDIS. So NDIS is about to be more than a defence budget. And it was initially, when it was promised, it was $14 billion, impacting 400,000 Australian families with profoundly disabled members of that family. At that time, back in 2013, I think it was, I didn't know what $14 billion meant in respect to a budget. So I looked up, as a comparison, the PBS, Pharmaceutical Benefits Scheme, which benefits every Australian household. And that was, at that stage, costing $8.9 billion. That was the point of time I realised that there's something wrong with this scheme. This is costing way too much for way too little impact. And I think I made a LinkedIn post about it, and I discovered that to battle the NDIS is like kicking puppies. You must hate disabled kids. Well, I never said I hated disabled kids. I don't think we should send ourselves broke helping disabled families.
And not at the expense of defence.
And there's it's opportunity cost too, right? So we could spend that on NDIS or something else.
Yeah.
So defence is one of those things we can spend on. And there hasn't been that mature conversation. It's just like, if you don't like this, you must hate disabled kids. I'm like, it's not what I said.
Using your unique understanding of the things we've heard about today, how would you quantify or qualify Australia's defence preparedness right now?
So 3 years ago, March 2023, they released the Defence Strategic Review, which I think was a pretty good document. It basically reorientated the Australian Army, for example, into a version of the US Marine Corps, with their goal to go forward to the islands to the north, take lots of long-range missile systems and just make it really tough for people to get close to Australia. Good strategy, right? Underfunded. So for me, it all comes back down to funding. The people we have there are very well trained. They're probably not well equipped enough, or the systems that they do have aren't well maintained enough, and it's a big issue with the Navy at the moment. And there's just not enough of us. So we also, in general, there's a changing format of war at the same time. We're going away from the $3 million missile to the $50,000 drone. That's the general trend. It's a lot more nuanced than that, and we're not following that hard enough, fast enough. So not only don't have enough capital in there, we don't have enough people. We also have the wrong format of goods to prosecute the next conflict. But I think training's good. They're great people. But you don't want to be sending great people into that sort of situation with the wrong gear.
All right. So what else are you equipping us with from a defence capability point of view?
Well, I think space is where it's at. I mean, is this a Shark Tank pitch still, or am I?
Yeah,
Okay,
I mean,
right.
Obviously. I know you haven't been on the show for a while.
It's been 10 years, actually, Karl. It's been more than 10 years. It's 12 years.
You've never looked better.
Thank you very much. I would pitch space. I would sort of say that space is very well named. That in low Earth orbit, so from 200 kilometres to 500 to 350 kilometres, there's 192 billion cubic kilometres of space. So space is very well named, and we have a lot of great space companies in Australia, and we have a massive capability gap in space. There's one Sydney-based company here, for example. We call them Uber for secret space cameras. So they take a camera that for example, takes pictures of wheat crops in Australia on a satellite. And when it's not over Australia, they turn it around and they take pictures of other satellites. Turns out those pictures are somewhat valuable to certain people. The fact we've co-invested with the CIA indicates what sort of product it is, to be honest. It's pretty cool when you...
This is like listening to Australia's military dirty secrets.
Well, it's all. None of it's hidden, but none of it's talked about often.
But I'm here for it. Like this is like the maths of the Defence Force.
No, there's when I started this, I got a lot of questions from investors about, is there enough to invest in Australia? And I'm like, oh my God, there is. The low hanging fruit out there is amazing.
So tell me about that then.
Well, I don't want to name very many company names because there's still a massive societal sort of resistance.
And I don't want a cardboard drone flying into my joint.
Yeah, well, that's a side pack. That's a great family-owned business in Melbourne. The Vicino family.
Amazing.
They are just lovely people. You should have David on at some point. He's great. We have the world's best small drone autopilot companies in Geelong, Victoria. The world's best they're called electronic speed controllers. So the power brains in a drone, or the power circuitry that makes a drone work well, it's called a speed controller. The best one of those in the world is in Hobart. Video modems, I think it takes a signal back from the drone to the controller, Brisbane. Passive radar, best in the world. War-winning technologies in Adelaide. Maritime autonomy, Perth. We have just the most amazing centres, companies of excellence in this space that are deception and decoys in Queensland. There's a guided weapons manufacturer in Logan, Queensland. I'm not sure you know about those guys yet.
No.
So they're great. They're a lot of fun. Nothing like a guided weapon.
Something. Give me something on it.
Well, they're called Black Sky Aerospace. They don't hide themselves. Called Black. They've got a factory down at Gundawindi as well. A 3.3 million acre test range out near Auguffella. Larger than Wales. A massive test range. I've been overseas at conferences with the founder when he tells like overseas military officials he's got access to a private 3.3 million acre test range, and they think he's lying or mad or both. It's pretty funny. And these guys make guided weapons, but not for us, for other customers.
Again, I'm struggling to comprehend why we aren't lining our bunkers with them.
I am too. I don't know. I honestly don't know the answer. It is disappointing. But also bring back to, I've invested in close to 100 things. So, and when I get something in Australia, what I do is, great, this works in Australia. Let's take you to the biggest market in the world. So, and that's in everything I've done pretty well. So I do the same in defence. Now I say, okay, you got a great defence product. Let's take you to the biggest market in the world, which is the US. They're also a faster buyer. I mean, there's up before DOGE, there were 275 different agencies in the US DoD who could buy without a tender. They publish names, they publish the purchasing officer's details. So you can go to SEAL Team 6, ring up the purchasing officer and say, what do you need? And they'll say, we need Ghost Murmur or one of these, cool gadgets. And if you can sell it to them, they will buy it at full rate. They'll pay you to go over there and test it and trial it. Now, if they like it, they'll buy more. In Australia, they'll nickel and dime you. They'll take 2, 6, 8, 10, 2 years, months, 2 years to make that decision. In the US, you find the buyer, you go over, you test it. In a lot of cases, they will send testing teams over here. And if they like it, it's like, great, can we have like 100?
It's like a scene from Iron Man.
Yeah, but something like that, actually, yeah, a bit like that.
But Australia obviously needs, I think I talk on behalf of a lot of Australians in that I'm fascinated by this and I want to know more about it. And maybe there's been a propensity over the years for people not to talk about it because of, some of the messaging around anti-war and, it's just not cool to talk about this stuff.
You'll never find some more anti-war than a soldier or a former soldier. You honestly, you'd think that any of us want this. It's hard. Being a soldier's hard. Being in combat's hard. But you don't stay out of wars by not being prepared to fight one. If you're not prepared to fight it, you're getting to one in a heartbeat. And that's, you'll find ex-soldiers, ex-service people, are the most anti-war people you'll come across.
So you're sitting there right now as a former soldier. You've made bucket loads doing your thing. You're a smart guy. You're saying, Australia, wake up.
Yes, a statement. Yeah, please wake up. We're lucky that we sit at the bottom of the world. It's also part of our problem. World's longest supply routes, as we're seeing at the moment as well. So that's also an advantage and a disadvantage. So we're quite complacent, but we do need to wake up. We have so much here to make it work. We have all the resources. We have the great brains, to be honest, and we just get in our own way too often.
So can we invest in this stuff as well? I mean, we've got a little bit of TA money left over here at the Karl Stefanovic
Well,
show.
I think ASIC says I can't give investment advice, Karl, but I run an investment fund. We've raised $17 million at this point. I'm the largest investor in it at 5 point something. My wife would know that better than I do. We've invested in 6 businesses so far, 4 Australian businesses, 2 US businesses.
You see it as the clear way forward for Australia, don't you?
I see the way that we can. I hope that if I make this business successful, I'll return multiples of invested capital back to my investors. The end outcome of that will be great, strong Australian businesses that provide for the future. I want to stay focused. This is not a charity. This is a business. I need to return money to investors. That's my first goal. If I get this right, I want to create what I call a defence investment flywheel. So I invest in some young kid who ends up being the next defence billionaire, right? Then he becomes an investor and invests in the next kid, and we start popping these things out, and this flywheel just keeps spinning around and spinning around and spinning around. That's my fervent hope.
Why would anyone want Australia to keep its very best and keep investing in Australia and trying to achieve some level of fantastical sovereignty?
Yeah, we're fighting against the tide sometimes, aren't we, really? It is frustrating. I have the best job maybe you've got a better job, Karl, but I think I've got the best job in the world. I get to make people's dreams come true. I'm an investor. I get to break a lot of dreams at the same time. It's like, and a lot of people view getting an investment from an investor as being a bit of a lottery ticket when it's not. That's just the start of a hard journey. But they have their idea of how they're going to change their part of the world and how they see the universe. We get to invest capital, and then we get to help them make that happen. And hopefully, my goal is to make them unbelievably stinking rich, successful, right? And I'll take a share of that away at the same time. And my investors will, and we'll get to do that again and again and again.
Can I ask how does someone who's a creative in this field come up with something that you want to invest in? How do they get to you? Because
we have a website, Beaten Zone Venture Partners, beatonzone.vc. How they get to me. I'm a VC. I'll talk to anybody. My job is to travel the world and travel Australia and have lunch and dinner with interesting people. Basically, that's all I do. And I have a team. We have a team of 7, including me. 1 in the US. We've got a venture partner, Sean, in the US. And we have a deal scout. Jake is actually on the mission to Turkey at the moment to go for Anzac Day with the Veterans, with Department of Veterans Affairs. But Jake will go to the opening of an envelope around Australia. If you can find us, if you have a concept in defence, we like defence things. So we like the themes around lethality and survivability, not because I'm bloodthirsty, right? Not by any stretch, but because very few people in Australia invest in that, right? And the reality is, if you're the only person with a goal willing to invest, you get to set the price. If I've got to compete against 3 people to buy a house, the price goes up. If I'm the only person buying the house, the price goes down. So we get a great buy-side equation. And so we invest at a really good rate into Australian businesses. We then take them to the US, which has more revenue, and their multiples over there, if we're paying revenue multiples here of 10, 15 times revenue, they're paying 40 to 50 in the US. So we get them here, get them successful, and we get all these multiple uplifts along the way, which is great for our investors.
Part of any war is PR, and I've got, on behalf of the Karl Stefanovic show, a lot of ideas on the PR side of things. Are you willing to invest? Why are you laughing?
I've got my own PR person standing right beside me at the moment. That's why.
You don't need the show, or what?
No, definitely. I'd love to hear what you got to offer.
Very influential in some regional parts of Australia.
Oh, yeah, okay, that'd be awesome. I'm not sure what you're proposing. Sorry, Karl. Maybe I'm a bit slow today.
I think you're right onto it, mate. Really good to talk to you. I'd love to talk to you again sometime. Fascinating.
Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.